This is my 2022 Gas Gas MC125 that I bought for $4,500. And even though this bike is basically brand new, it's pretty much trash. For 2025, Gas Gas produced a new bike, their MC150. But this all new small bore 2-stroke did not get a XC model. Most of the riding I do is single track and cross country style up in the mountains, which is where the idea to make the world's first Gas Gas 150 XC originated. But something about tearing down a bike that only has 65 hours on a brand new top end just didn't sit right with me without at least one last send-off ride.
Can't tear down the bike without doing at least one last ride. Not sound good. It's like lean popping or something. Do you hear it?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I lost all power. When I hit that, it was gone. Really not a lot of combustion. I freaking hate wheeling this bike, but I'm gonna try and give you guys a couple. That right there is how you properly send off a rear for the old build series.
Neighbors are gonna love that one.
Oh yeah, bud. Runs so good.
After risking my life riding this incredibly unpredictable and horribly running dirt bike, it was finally time for this thing to get torn down to the frame and rebuilt. What do you say we get to ripping a brand new dirt bike apart, huh? Some of you may be wondering why I would go ahead and tear down a perfectly good dirt bike that runs and performs fine, and it's because it doesn't. This is probably one of the worst running and performing dirt bikes I've ever owned in my entire life, and we're gonna explain exactly why here in a second. Typically when we would like wash a dirt bike, we would actually do like soap, but like 60% of these parts aren't really being reused, so it's not really worth cleaning them up too much. And then once we get like the engine pulled and it's just like the frame and swing arm and stuff, then we'll bring it back out to clean again. All right, you might be thinking that this is like a brand new bike, and this is a 2022. It's got, I think, 60 hours on it. This is the worst dirt bike I've ever owned in my entire life, so we're gonna show you some of the issues this thing has. All right, so starting off, these handlebars are a little bit bent. Probably one of the bigger issues is compression. I mean, it is pretty much gone. It's not bad, but it's not good either. And that's got a top end, I think, about 15 hours ago. So we already blew through the rings on that thing. The tires on this thing, everyone's gonna tell me that these aren't bald, but that's bald, man. It's got the Mikuni carb on it, which is almost enough to make me switch from KTM, because Mikuni carbs are awful. I put probably $400 into jetting, trying to get this thing to run right. Still runs horrible. We'll put a clip of it in here. But this thing has never ran right since the day I've had it. And then finally, arguably one of the most dangerous parts of the bike. The suspension is awful. This rear is insanity. It's catching like air off the ground. We've got a load of parts inside that's gonna go into this, but before we do that, we need to break this thing down and kind of figure out what we're working with, and then we will get it cleaned up and then get it rebuilt. Every build of mine starts with the plastics being removed, with only one bolt holding it on. The front number plate is the first to go, followed by the 4 bolts that hold on the front fender. 2 small bolts are all that holds on the seat on this as well, and then we can see that it does have 63 hours. With the fender and seat gone, it's time to remove the rest of the plastics. Each radiator shroud has 2 bolts up top and then 2 on the inside here, and they get removed. The rear plastics are a little bit different though. They have a combination of 8mm bolts and Torx heads that have to be removed from the subframe. The rear fender is supposed to have 2 bolts up top here, but one's missing, so I just need to remove the one up top and then the 2 down below, and it comes right off the bike. With the entire right side of the bike's plastic strips, it's time to move on to the left side. Flip the bike around so the lighting's better for you guys, and then go ahead and strip all the plastics off the side as well as the louvers on the radiators. And then disconnect the breather hose for the gas tank because it's coming off. To remove the gas tank, you need to disconnect the hose where it goes into the carburetor and then remove the 8mm bolt on top, and it comes right off the bike. Next up is the subframe, which can't be removed until I go ahead and pull the exhaust system. Once again, flipping the bike around for you guys, I go ahead and remove the 2 8mm bolts that hold the silencer on, as well as the bolts that are holding the exhaust pipe up top here on. And pro tip, the easiest thing I've found for removing exhaust springs is using a piece of paracord and popping them off like this. With the exhaust system off, we can go ahead and remove the bolts for the subframe here, as well as disconnect the boots where it goes into the carburetor. The subframe is definitely a bit of a pain. Even with removing all these bolts and the ones up top, it's still not ready to come out because the CDI box and hour meter are holding it in. Luckily, the CDI box is just 2 6mm bolts and it gets moved, and after cutting the zip tie, it's out of the way. And the hour meter is just as easy, just peeling it off from the adhesive here. And with the small amount of electronics that are actually on this bike off, we can finally disconnect the subframe and throw it in the pile of parts. And after about 30 minutes of teardown, this bike's already halfway to being a pile of parts only. Moving up to the front of the bike, we're going to strip the handlebars first. After removing the bar pad, I can go ahead and get an Allen key and loosen up the throttle tube here so I can rotate it out of the way, which gives me access to the 8mm bolts that hold on the front brake lever so I can get it removed. Since this carburetor is getting thrown away, there's not much of a reason to disconnect from the throttle tube, so I just go ahead and pull it from the bottom here, remove the throttle tube and where it's hooked onto the frame, and finally this absolute piece of junk Mikuni is off my dirt bike. I've never been so happy. With the right side of the handlebar stripped, I go ahead and repeat the process for the left side of the handlebars, removing the clutch as well as removing the kill switch on the bars. And I attempt to remove the grips on this thing, but they must have glued this on with the craziest stuff I've ever seen in my life, so I couldn't get them off and gave up because we're not reusing these bars anyway. Removing the bars is extremely easy. You just undo the 4 bolts that are holding the clamps on and they come right off. Front brake lever and reservoir is in my way here, and I can't remove it until I go ahead and pull the caliper off the bottom of the rotor here. But once it's finally removed, I can get it off the bike. Rather than continuing the front of the bike, I'm going to be moving the back here so it stays balanced and doesn't fall off the stand. But before I can do that, I need to remove the skid plate because this is being a woods bike now, this isn't going to hold up. It's pretty self-explanatory, but you can't take the skid plate off with the bike on the stand here, so I throw a triangle in the swing arm, and these Turbis skid plates come off really easily, just one bolt and it pops right off. With the skid plate off, we're going to be moving on to the rest of the bike, and like I said earlier, this thing gets tippy when I start taking parts off, so I always ratchet strap it to the rafter so it doesn't tip over. If you own a dirt bike, chances are you've probably pulled your front wheel off at some point. It's a super simple process where you just basically take the nut off the axle bolt, undo the pinch bolt, and then you can go ahead and pull the axle bolt out and the wheel comes off the bike. The front forks are another one that seems scarier than they are. It's just 4 pinch bolts, and then the left one comes out super easily. The right one takes a little bit of wrestling, but that one comes out pretty easily as well. Moving on to the rear of the bike, before I can remove the swing arm and the tire, I need to go ahead and remove the chain as well, so that way the rear tire and swing arm can be removed when it's time. With the chain pulled off the bike, I can go ahead and remove the axle nut, so that way I can go ahead and punch out the axle bolt, which with a little bit of convincing allows it to come off the wheel and the wheel will be removed from the bike. But we're still not quite ready to remove the swing arm just yet. The rear shock has to be removed before the swing arm can come out. And with the impact not cutting it, we have to go back old school with a socket and a ratchet just to remove the top bolt. And then there's one more bolt on the bottom of the linkage here that I have to remove, and the shock can be removed. If you haven't noticed already, the swing arm is kind of a huge pain to remove. We're still not quite done. I have to go ahead and pull all the different bolts for the linkage down here, as well as remove the frame guards on the bike, so that way I can go ahead and access the nut that is underneath the frame guard to then remove the swing arm bolt from it. And go figure, it's still not quite ready to be removed. I have to go ahead and pull the brake caliper as well. But with all that removed, I can finally go ahead and punch out the bolt here and get the swing arm pulled off the bike. And when the swing arm removed, I can go ahead and pull everything for the reservoir here, as well as all the hardware for the rear brake lever to come off too. And after removing the wishbone for the linkage here, the rear of this bike is completely wrapped up and removed, which means this bike is about 90% torn down. The last thing I need to do besides remove the engine is remove the triple clamps on this bike, which come off with a pinch bolt, and a hammer just kind of pops them out of the frame here. And after probably the best catch in my entire life, they're out. As I explained earlier, most of the parts on this bike are getting replaced, not reused, and these foot pegs are no exception. So I'm going to go ahead and punch the pin out here and remove them off of the bike. And I basically just do the exact same thing for the other peg as well. Which leaves us with the last thing this bike needs, which is engine removal. To do this, I'm first going to start by disconnecting and removing all the electrical components that are going to hold this engine up and keep it from coming out of the frame. Things like spark plug wires and CDI box connections. Then I'm going to be removing the bolts for the brackets that hook the engine to the frame and support it on both sides of the dirt bike. Once all those brackets are removed, I'm going to be going ahead and moving on to removing the case saver and then going on to the coolant system. Since the coolant system and the radiators hook the engine to the frame, I need to go ahead and loosen all the clamps on the hoses for it. And then by removing the drain bolt down here on the water pump, it lets all the coolant in the entire system flush out of the bike. With most of the coolant out, I can go ahead and remove all the hoses here, and then I can start individually pulling each of these radiators and separating them from the frame of the dirt bike itself. With all the prep work done, removing the engine itself is actually incredibly easy. There's basically 2 bolts, one on the bottom here, and there's also another one up top that hold it in, and once you pull those out, you can go ahead and wrestle this motor right out of the frame a lot easier than you kind of expect on a dirt bike like this. With the motor now out, the last thing that's left of this bike is just the frame here, so I'm going to pull it off of the hook on the ceiling and then go ahead and set it with the rest of the parts that are on the floor. And that's pretty much it. It took me about 3 hours to break this entire bike down, and that's how you take a 2022 dirt bike and make it a pile of parts. The only other thing I gotta do here is strip everything off of the swing arm as well as the subframe, because these are gonna be replaced and I need to put new plastics and decals, so stripping them down makes it easier to clean them and ready for new parts. And these builds definitely take some time, so it's gonna take me a couple days to kind of get to the next part of this series, so we're gonna go ahead and clean everything up in the garage here so it's nice, organized. A lot of people ask me how I don't lose things. That's how you don't lose things. Keep them organized and keep them in a pile. All right, that is gonna wrap up teardown on this Gas Gas 125. Got a lot of changes coming in for this bike, including bottom end, new cylinder, you know, obviously the 150 conversion, and making this thing the 150 XC that Gas Gas should have produced with new carb, new pipe, silencer, everything like that. We got around $5,200 worth of parts from motorsport.com going into this thing, so it's gonna be nuts. So definitely make sure you watch out, subscribe if you haven't, and yeah, it's gonna be sick.